Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to our Terraform on Azure series. And this is going to be a last part of this series. So in this series I'm just going to cover some basics of Terraform. And in this series what we are going to do is we will create virtual machine, the Azure virtual machine, and let's try to create multiple Azure virtual machine. And I will recall and I will try to use the previous all methods and technique that we use in this particular series, the variables, locals, interpolation, and we'll try to create an efficient Terraform .tf file. Okay, so the agenda of this particular video is might be this is not the right or the correct way of doing it, but this will give you a better understanding of how to use different techniques in your Terraform file. So it is completely based on your scenario, how you are building the Terraform. Are you integrating with any DevOps, or is there any third-party integration of it? So I just want to give you a clear understanding of foundation of the basics of Terraform and how to use these different techniques. So you can have a better understanding of how to write an efficient Terraform templates. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the virtual machine. So we already have this vnet, subnet, resource group, nick, and every set is already created. So I will create one more folder over here that is called virtual machine. Okay, and in this virtual machine I will create one more file called vm.tf. That's it. Okay, now let's go back to our Terraform documentation and try to figure out the actual Terraform code for the virtual machine. But before that, let's create the first configuration of Terraform. So I can copy that from, let me copy that from subnet. I will go to the subnet.tf file. Yes, and this is what I want. I want the Terraform block and the provider block. So let me copy this two thing. I will go to vm.tf, and here I have this Terraform block and the backend block. So this is going to store our tf state file, and I will give this file name as virtual machine. Okay, so it will store this virtual machine.tf state file. Once the VM is created, it will store that virtual machine data, all the resource ID and all the other things in this particular storage account and in this container. So we have already used that in subnet part. So if you are not clear about this, you can check that video of state file, and this is the provider. Now what I need is I need the template for the virtual machine. Okay, so let me go back to Azure portal, and here I will search for virtual machine. Oh, sorry, this is not the Azure portal, this is the Azure documentation of Terraform. And here let me see for the Windows virtual machine. Oh, here it is, Azure Windows virtual machine, and this is the template. Okay, so if you see the template, this is the provider, and here it's creating resource group. We don't want that, it's already created. Here it's creating the virtual network, then subnet, then network interface. So we have already created this all things. Okay, what we need is we need Windows virtual machine block. So this is the resource block of that. So let me copy this one, and you will also have this argument reference over here, so we will come back to that. And let me paste the Azure virtual machine block. Okay, and for the label part I'm giving this name as VM1. Okay, and we have name, resource group, location, size, admin username, password, network interface ID. So here we need to provide the ID of network interface. So let's use data block over here, and OSDIS. Okay, LRS, and the source image reference, we have this one. So let me try to copy this one and paste it again. So we are trying to create two virtual machines over here. Okay, so this is VM1 label and this is VM2 label. So what we need is we need network interface ID. Okay, so for network interface ID, let's use data block. So I will go to the documentation page again, and here I will use network interface, and here you can see that the data sources link is available there. Inside that you will find Azure network interface, and this is how you can call the network interface data block, or how you can write this one. So let me copy this and go back to the actual TF file. Here I am going to use data block, then Azure RM network interface. I'm calling this as, let's say, NIC1. Okay, and here I need to write name of the NIC and resource group of the NIC. So let me log into the Azure portal. So here I have logged in to the Azure portal, and let me go to the network interface. We have two NIC. So the second NIC I created using portal just for this demo. So let me copy this resource group name and we'll use that over here. And ID, I also need the network interface 1. This is the name of the NIC, and I will use that over here. So we have this data block for first NIC, okay, for the network interface 1, and I need one more data block for the second virtual machine, so I can attach the second NIC to the second VM. So I will copy this same block, I will use that over here. For the naming, I will use this for NIC2 because we have already used NIC1 over here, and this is going to be a same resource group because we have the second network interface 2 in the same resource group, and the location is West Europe. So this is going to be a network interface 2. So I will use that. I will change that 1 to 2. So we have this 2 NIC is this 2 NIC data block is created over here, and I will use this data block interpolation. Okay, so let me go to the network interface ID. So this is my VM1. You can just see that label over here, and here I'm going to write the ID for this one. So I will use data, then dot, then Azure network interface, this one, and then NIC1, and I will use dot NIC1, and then I need ID of that NIC. So after this I will use dot and then ID. That's it. Okay, so this is going to be, so the Terraform will query this particular network interface on Azure portal, and it will pick up that NIC ID, and then it will use that NIC ID over here. It will go same for the second virtual machine, and in this VM I'm going to use the same thing. Let me copy this, and I will just change the label so it will redirect, or it will reference to the second NIC, this one. Okay, so we have NIC ready over here, and what we need else. Okay, so name, resource group name, and the location. Size is going to be same. I will use the same size. Let's, for example, keep that as it is. So for size, let's use local block for size and this source image reference. Okay, so inside this data block I will use local, and then I will use this local block, and inside that I will use size is equal to, so I don't need to repeat that one. Let me copy this one, paste that, and then what I need is publisher offer SKU version. Okay, this is going to be our marketplace image reference, so I will use this same one. So let me copy this and use that over here. Okay, and then I will use this local block over here. So let's take an example that you want to create same type of virtual machine. Okay, the marketplace image is going to be same and you want to create multiple virtual machine. So in that case you can use the same single local block, and you can provide that standard values over here, and then use that local block in your resource block configuration. So you don't need to change that value on every virtual machine Terraform configuration. You just change that value over here. You want to change that to F2 to something different, or D series VM size, just to use that value over here, and it will reflect that to this resource block. Okay, so let me change this size attribute value. So I will use that local over here, then dot, and then size, this particular key. The same goes for the publisher offer SKU and version. So here I'm going to use local not s, then dot, then this is the key publisher. So copy this, use that over here, then again local dot offer, this is the offer key. So I'm just giving a reference, then local dot SKU, use that, and then local dot and then version. Okay, so don't confuse that. This is kind of this is the key that defined by me. Okay, so even if I want, I can use size 1 over here. That is fine. I'm just creating my own key and then value, and then I'm giving reference over there. But this size is actual attribute that is required for Terraform. So you cannot use size 1 over here. That is not possible. Okay, if you use that, it will give you an error. So this is a standard attribute that this particular resource block should have. Okay, and you will get this size attribute or publisher offer SKU version. These are the standard one, and you will get that on this Terraform attribute and argument reference. Okay, and the local that we are using, this particular key, these are the user defined key. You can use any name over here, that doesn't matter. Okay, you have to provide this local and then particular key reference, so the Terraform will understand what type of information need to fill over. So Terraform will check for the local blocks, then it will check for this particular key size, and once this key found, then it will use this standard F2 over here in this particular field. That is how this local block works. Okay, and then I will use copy. Let me copy this same and use that over here, because we are creating the same configuration. So even if you want to make it in a different way, you can also use count method over here if the counts are dynamic. So it is completely depend on you how you design the code. So this just for the demo purpose, I'm just using this value so you guys can understand what is going there and how to use those details. Okay, and even if you want to use storage account type, if you know that this standard LRS is going to be same for all the virtual machine, use that in a local block. That is fine. So whenever you want to change that particular size, you can change that in local block, and you have to change that only once. So in this case, if I want to change the size of the VM, I will change that over here only at one time, and then it will apply to all the virtual machine block. So I don't need to just change that in each and every virtual machine. Okay, so it is depend on the scenario, how you are what is your scenario in production and how you are designing the solution for that. And let's also take variables. So variable is missing, so let me save this file, and I will create one more file here called variables .tf, and in this variable.tf I will provide variable for name, resource group, and location. So variable, this is called name, and then the type is string, and the default value is equal to, even I cannot use variable a single name because name should be different in this case. So let's use a resource group and location because we have that same. So let me use resource group because we are using this same resource group, and the default value of resource group is, let me copy, this one. This is going to be our resource group, and we name variable for location, okay, and the type is string, and let me use default value. So our default value of location is West Europe. Let me copy paste this one. Okay, so we have this two variable block. Now let me use that variable block over here. So we can use var dot, and then name of this variable, resource group. Same goes for the location, var dot location. Okay, dot resource group location. Let me copy this to over here, var dot resource group and var dot location. So it will pick up the same value, resource group and location, from this two variable, and it will create two VMs in same resource group in same location. I'm not touching this admin and password. Let's keep that as it is. And what else is remaining? Yeah, we need availability set, but I don't think that value is available over here. So let me go back to the documentation portal, and here let me again search for virtual machine and Windows virtual machine. Here let me see for availability set. It should be there somewhere. Yeah, this is availability set ID, and this is optional. Okay, so let me copy this one, and it required ID. So let me figure out how we can use that one, where I can use that. Let me use that over here, availability set ID. So we have availability set created, but the state file is here. We don't have state file created, and so okay, we also don't have outputs. So, okay, so let me use availability set block, data block. So we'll use the same way how we define over here, but in case if you have already created availability set, and if you want to use if you have already stored that output block in particular state file, then you can actually pick up that state file and use it over here. Let's do one thing. Let's try to create one availability set quickly, and I will use, so we have created this 3 availability set. Okay, using local block. So let me create one more AV set, and I will store the state file on Azure storage account, not here. So let me copy that code from subnet subnet.tf. Yeah, So this is going to be a backend configuration. Let me copy this. I will go to avsite.tf, and here in Terraform I will use this code, Terraform block. I will use this backend Azure RM code, resource group, storage account, container name, and here I will call this as avset.tf state file. Okay, and let me go back to portal and let me search for availability set. Yeah, we have this 3 sets created. Let's create one more so I can store that in that particular ID in output file. So let me copy this one, copy, and I will use avset 4. Here I'm going to use 4. Okay, and I will use output block over here, and I will store availability set ID. I need ID for that. Output. Okay, so this is going to be avset ID, or just write avset ID, and then I'm going to use description is equal to avset 4 ID. Okay, and the value is going to be Azure RM availability set. Let me copy this one, then dot avset 4, and then we can use ID. So if you want to confirm that, go to the documentation page, search for availability set. Here if you just scroll down, you can see the following attribute are exported, and this is the attribute called ID. Okay, so you can write that over here, dot ID, and this is the label. It's nothing but the label. Okay, so let me save this one, and let me quickly go to availability set and then use Terraform init. So I need init because we have added this backend configuration. So let me write Terraform init. So it's asking for to copy the state to a new Azure RM backend. I will use yes, copy this one. Okay, and when I type Terraform plan, let's see, and you can clearly see that it's only creating one resources over here because those 3 resources are already created. This is the avset 4. Okay, and the ID is going to know after the apply. So let me go ahead and use Terraform apply, approve. And this state file is the old state file, terraform.tf state. We have given this new name, avset.tf state file, and hopefully we will get this AV set ID in state file, so we can use that ID in our virtual machine. Apply completed. Okay, let's go back to the portal. This will take some time, but let me go to the storage account and then the containers, then Terraform. So we have this AV set state file created. Let me download this and open in VS Code. And yes, in output field we have this AV set ID, and this is the value of AV set ID, and we are going to use this value in our virtual machine. Okay, so we have used this availability set ID over here, and we need to provide ID. So let me create again data block to capture this backend configuration. Okay, so I will create that below this one. Let me minimize this one. And in subnet, I think we have created this. Let me recall, I think in TF state. Yeah, so this is the backend configuration. Let me copy this one. We created that in Nick. Okay, so you can check that code. All the codes are available on GitHub. Okay, so you can just go there and download and see what are there inside the code and do the practice. So here we are calling the remote state file, and this is the label. So I need AV set. I'm just using this label. Okay, then backend Azure RM. Then in configuration, I need to use the same configuration that we use for AV set, and we have the same configuration, storage account, everything. Only the state file name is different, so I will use that state file name. Okay, so I'm creating this data block and giving a reference how to find avset.tf state file. So Terraform will know where to find this particular file in Azure storage account, and from this file I want to pick up availability set ID. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I will use this data block over here. So I will use data dot and then Terraform remote state. Let me copy this one and then label AV set name. And when you write the label, then Terraform know that this is the configuration and this is the state file that you need to look up. And once he found this AV set state file, this is the file which I open over here, JSON file. I need to look for outputs. Okay, so I will use outputs over there. So after AV set dot outputs, and after output, this is the key AV set ID. So I will use this key. So Terraform know how to pick up this particular value, and that value is nothing but subnet ID value. Okay, so we have this AV set ID. I will copy the same one and let me copy the entire key and value pair, and I will use that for VM2 after this password. Okay, so I think we have covered almost every basic thing that we have discussed in our previous Azure Terraform on Azure series. So we have this Terraform block, then we have required provider, Azure RM, then we have this backend configuration. So once the VM is created, Terraform will store the two virtual machine configuration in this state file on the storage account container. Then we have this provider block, then we have used this two data block to capture the network interface. So just want to give you an idea that this two network interface 1 and 2, these two are already created on Azure. Okay, and we are just using their name and resource group. So this data block will identify what is the network interface ID, and we are using that particular ID over here in this block. Okay, and same goes for the VM2. After this data block, I am using locals because I feel that this particular values are going to be standard for both the VM1 and VM2 templates. So I don't want to repeat those values, so I'm going to use the same value. I'm just creating a static value over here in locals, and then I'm giving that locals reference. So you can see that local reference is provided in this value field and over here also in source image. Okay, so we also covered this locals, and after that what we did is we created one more availability set and we stored that AV set output TF state file in the storage account container. And here I'm just using data block to capture the remote state file which is stored in this particular storage account, this container, and this is the name of the TF state file. So using this data block, Terraform know how to find the avset.tfstate file, and then we are giving this data block reference or interpolation over here to identify or capture the availability set ID. So this is how I created this entire Terraform TF file, and we almost cover all the data blocks and the other methods and techniques. So this is, I will not say this is the complete or the perfect approach to do it. It is completely depend on your scenario. You want to create multiple VMs and you want to make it dynamic, you can use count block. You don't need to write this template over here. You need to write the same template over and over again. But this is just, I just want to give you an idea how this things works, how to use this particular data blocks and locals. And yeah, we also use variables. So let me click on this variable.tf, and we also use this resource group and location variable. We have provided this default value, and in case this value is going to change and depend on the user, that what I feel these particular values are changeable, so I have provided that in variable, so user can provide those values into the variable, and then we have provided that variable interpolation, resource group and location field. The only thing that is changing is name. So let me change name to VM1 and VM2. I'm not making it more complicated, let's keep it simple. Okay, so I hope this all configurations are correct, and let me go ahead and run this Terraform file. And for that, let me switch to virtual machine, and I will use Terraform in it. Okay, so initialization has been completed successfully. Let me run Terraform plan and see. Hope I'm not getting any errors. Oh, that's great. It's actually creating the two resources, and I don't see any error on this configuration, so I think this configuration is right. So here I'm creating the VM1. This is going to be the configuration, and here you can see in availability set is actually picked up the AV set ID successfully. Okay, and in the network interface ID, it's also fetch the correct network interface ID. So for network interface ID, we use data block, and this ID is already created. And the AV set, we use data block, but we use state file, the pre-created state file, and from there we are pulling this ID. Okay, so let me try to run Terraform apply and then auto approve. Okay, so it started creating the virtual machine. And it's giving me the error message. Let me see what is that. Oh, the availability set for cannot found. Let me check where that AV set is created. I think this location is creating the problem. I see. The resource group is correct, but AV set have a different location. Okay, so let me do one thing quickly over here. Let me go back to AV set. Where is our AV set file? Okay, so here I'm gonna use, let me create one more AV set. AV set 5, and for location I will use West. What was that? West Europe. Yep. So let me hard code location over here, West Europe. I'm not using this local because the local location is already there, and if I change this local location, then might be, I'm not sure, but it will also affect the pre-created AV set, because when Terraform look for the location is going to be different in this locals, and the AV set created in a different location, so might be it will create a problem. So I don't want to touch that local. I will hard code this one, and the resource group, it's picking up the resource group 1. Okay, that's fine. So let me create West Europe location, and I think update domain and fall domain will also change. Let me go back to availability set, and if I change location, resource group West Europe, then we have fall domain 2 and update domain 5, and we can rest till 3. Okay, fall domain 2, update domain 6. Yeah, we can use update domain till 6, so that's fine. That's fine, guys, that's fine. So I will keep this particular value same as it is, and I will just changing the location. Now let me go back to AV set. Let me save this AV set file, and I will use Terraform plan, and let's see what it is giving. Okay, so it's creating only one resource, and this is going to be a AV set 5. Okay, and everything is fine. Okay, let me go ahead and create this AV set 5, and we will also need to update the output block. So here is using AV set ID. Okay, and this is going to be description. AV set ID is for its AV set ID is already have AV set 4. Okay, so I don't want to mess up with that thing, so let me create one more output block, and I will use AV set 5. Okay, and after that I will use this curly braces, and then I will use value is equal to Azure RM AV set. I will just copy this thing, and I will make it from 4 to 5, and ID is going to be same, because this is my label AV set 5, and this is the same label that I am using over here. I have created one more block, so it will store the AV set 5 ID in this case. Okay, So I think that is fine. Let me quickly run Terraform plan again. Yep, and it's showing that changes to the output ab set 5 and none after apply. Let me create Terraform, apply, and then auto approve. Sorry, Terraform apply auto approve. Okay. And I started creating the AV set 5. We also need to change this particular key in our virtual machine configuration, and I can see AV set 5 successfully created. Let me go back to VM, and here let me search for AV set ID. Yeah, so we have used this AV set ID, so I will change this to what we use here in output, AV set 5. So I will use that over here, AV set 5, and same goes for the second virtual machine. Okay, let me save this one VM file, and then let me go back to VM folder, and I will use Terraform plan again. So it's creating two virtual machine, and let me see for availability set ID, and it picked up the correct ID, the availability set 5. Okay, and the second configuration, availability set ID. Okay, so it's have picked up the availability set 5 ID. That's fine, and we have created that in West Europe. So let me go ahead and run Terraform, apply, auto approve once again, and let's see. So it started creating the VM1 and VM2. Okay, so you can see that the virtual machine are created successfully. So let me go back to the Azure portal and then go back to the virtual machine blade, and you can see the VM1 and VM2 is created successfully and it is in the running state. So this is how you can write the Terraform configuration from the scratch. And we also face some issues that is regarding the related with the regions. That was my mistake, that I need to check the AV set before creating it, which region it's actually getting created. So you guys also need to know about this prerequisites when you are creating a state file. And you guys saw that how I did the troubleshooting of AV set. So in case if you face this kind of issue in your test or production environment, you know how to do the troubleshooting. And this is how you can actually write the Terraform TF file from the scratch. You can create multiple blocks, different type of state file. You can call the state file, you can create locals, variables, data blocks, and this is how you can actually do the interpolation of all those blocks into your resource blocks, and you can create the resources on Azure. So I will highly recommend you to go ahead and check the GitHub page. I have uploaded all the codes into the GitHub page, and do the practice on your own. Until unless you are not doing the practice, you will not understand the how the Terraform works and how to write this effective or efficient code. Okay, and as I said, this was the last episode of Terraform on Azure series, but we are going to create more episodes on the Terraform and other programming language, coding, automation, and the DevOps tool on my YouTube channel. So guys, just go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will post every different kind of automation and coding tutorial almost in every alternate day, and there is more contents are coming. So if you subscribe to the channel, you will get content up to date, and I will try to cover as much as possible related with the coding and automation things and the DevOps things on different cloud platform. Thank you very much guys. I hope you like this series. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more upcoming videos.